Moving on to chapter 36 in Katzung's board reviews. This chapter is all about NSAIDs or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or NSAIDs, whatever, acetaminophen, and drugs used in rheumatoid arthritis and gout. So, inflammation is a complex response to cell injury that primarily occurs in vascularized connective tissue and often involves the immune response. The mediators of inflammation function to eliminate the cause of cell injury and clear away debris. So, in the mediators of inflammation, they function to eliminate the cause of cell injury and clear away the debris in preparation for tissue repair. Unfortunately, inflammation also causes pain, and in instances in which the cause of cell injury is not eliminated, can result in a chronic condition of pain and tissue damage, such as that seen in rheumatoid arthritis. The non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or NSAIDs and acetaminophen are often effective in controlling inflammatory pain. Other treatment strategies applied to the reduction of inflammation are targeted at the immune processes. So these include glucocorticoids and disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs such as DMARDs or DMARDs. So which include conventional synthetic small molecule or conventional synthetics, so CS DMARDs, and biologic B DMARD drugs. Gout is a metabolic disease associated with precipitation of uric acid crystals in the joints. So, treatment of acute episodes targets inflammation, whereas treatment of chronic gout targets both inflammatory processes and the production and elimination of uric acid. So, moving on to the classification of anti inflammatory drugs, acetaminophen, and drugs used in gout. So, basically, you have acetaminophen as a major family. Then you have the family of anti inflammatory drugs, wherein you have NSAIDs and DMARDs. DMARD for disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. So NSAIDs, you have aspirin, the classic example, other non-selective NSAIDs, and COX-2 inhibitors or cyclooxygenase inhibitors such as celecoxib. Okay, then you have DMARDs, so conventional synthetic and biological DMARDs. And then you have drugs used in gout. So acute gout drugs, they kind of target the inflammatory processes, so NSAIDs and glucocorticoids, whereas treatment of chronic gout includes targeting both the inflammatory processes as well as the production and elimination of uric acid, so the purine pathway. So you have colchicine, uricosurics such as probenecid, and xanthine oxidase inhibitors such as allopurinol, which is a suicide inhibitor of xanthine oxidase, as well as febuxostat. So let us look at some high yield terms to learn. So antipyretics are drugs that reduce fever. So you have aspirin, other NSAIDs, and acetaminophen. And COX and LOX, so cyclooxygenase and lipoxygenase pathways are the enzyme. Okay, they are the pathways, but the enzymes are responsible for prostaglandin and leukotriene synthesis. So COX, you get prostaglandins; LOX, you get leukotrienes. Then cytotoxic drugs, so they are drugs that interfere with essential processes, especially DNA maintenance and replication and cell division. Such drugs generally kill rapidly dividing cells and are used for cancer chemotherapy and immunosuppression. So cytotoxic drugs, they're cytocell toxic, so they're toxic to the cell. So they interfere with essential cellular processes such as DNA maintenance and replication and cell division. So they rapidly kill the dividing cells and are used for cancer chemotherapy and immunosuppression. Next, you have DMARDs or disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. So they are biological or conventional synthetic. So they are a diverse group of drugs that modify the inflammatory processes underlying rheumatoid arthritis and similar autoimmune conditions. So CS DMARDs have a slow onset of clinical effects. So S for slow. Okay. Next, you have non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So they are inhibitors of cyclooxygenase. So NSAIDs inhibit COX. So the term non-steroidal differentiates them from corticosteroid drugs. Okay. Non-steroid differentiates from corticosteroidal drugs such as cortisol. Then you have Ray's syndrome. So it is a rare syndrome of rapid liver degeneration and encephalopathy in children treated with aspirin during a viral infection. So what happens? There is liver degeneration and encephalopathy in children treated with aspirin during a viral infection. Then tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF alpha, is a cytokine that plays a central role in inflammation, and it is a target of several biologics, for example infliximab and etanercept, adalimumab, etc. Then uricosuric agents, they are drugs that increase the renal excretion of uric acid, so uricosuric, uric acid in the urine. Then xanthine oxidase, it is a key enzyme in the purine metabolism pathway that converts hypoxanthine to xanthine and xanthine to uric acid. So moving on to aspirin and other non-selective NSAIDs, so classification and prototypes. So aspirin or acetyl salicylic acid is a prototype of the salicylates and other NSAIDs. The older Other non-selective NSAIDs such as ibuprofen or indomethacin and many others vary primarily in their potency, analgesic and anti-inflammatory effectiveness, as well as the duration of action. Ibuprofen and naproxen have moderate effectiveness, indomethacin has greater anti-inflammatory effectiveness, and ketorolac has greater analgesic effectiveness. So indomethacin, we talked about this in Guyton and Hall while looking at the treatment of patent ductus arteriosus. So anti-inflammatory effectiveness, you don't want any inflammation in a kid, in a child, in an embryo or a fetus, right? So you do not want indomethacin to cause inflammatory actions, so it has a greater anti-inflammatory effectiveness. Ketorolac has greater analgesic effectiveness, okay, and ibuprofen has moderate effectiveness. So next, celecoxib was the first member of a newer NSAID subgroup. So the cyclooxygenase 2 selective inhibitors, the COX2 inhibitors, which were developed in an attempt to lessen the gastrointestinal toxicity associated with COX inhibition while preserving the efficacy. Unfortunately, clinical trials involving some of the highly selective COX2 inhibitors have shown higher incidence of cardiovascular thrombotic events than the non-selective drugs. So you can look at selective NSAIDs here. So as the NSAIDs and their half-life, so celecoxib, aspirin, diclofenac is an NSAID, so the half-life is 1.1 hours, okay. Celecoxib, remove the point, you get 11 hours. Ibuprofen, 2 hours. So diclofenac, 1.1 hours half-life. Ibuprofen, 2 hours half-life. Indomethacin, 4 to 5 hours half-life. Okay, you don't need all these. Next, moving on to the mechanism of action. So cyclooxygenase is the enzyme that converts arachidonic acid into the endoperoxide precursors of prostaglandins, important mediators of inflammation. So cyclooxygenase has at least two isoforms, COX1 and COX2. So COX1 is primarily expressed in non-inflammatory cells, whereas COX2 is expressed in activated lymphocytes, PMNLs, and other inflammatory cells. So COX1 in non-inflammatory cells and COX2 is expressed in inflammatory cells. So aspirin and other non-selective NSAIDs inhibit both cyclooxygenase isoforms. So they are non-selective, so they inhibit both, and thereby decrease prostaglandin and thromboxane synthesis throughout the body. Release of prostaglandins necessary for homeostatic function is disrupted, as is the release of prostaglandins involved in inflammation. The COX2 selective inhibitors have less effect on the prostaglandins involved in homeostatic function, particularly those seen in the GIT. The major difference between the mechanisms of action of aspirin and other NSAIDs is that aspirin, but not its active metabolite salicylate, so aspirin acetylates and thereby irreversibly inhibits cyclooxygenase, whereas the inhibition produced by other NSAIDs is reversible. So aspirin is an irreversible inhibitor of cyclooxygenase. The irreversible action of aspirin results in a longer duration of its antiplatelet effect and is the basis for its use as an antiplatelet drug. Okay, so let me just write this down. Aspirin is an irreversible inhibitor or just inhibitor of cyclooxygenase. So that forms the basis for its use as an antiplatelet drug. Moving on to the effects. So arachidonic acid derivatives are important mediators of inflammation. So cyclooxygenase inhibitors reduce the manifestations of inflammation, although they have no effect on underlying tissue damage or immunological reactions. So they do not treat the underlying mechanism, they just suppress the inflammatory processes. So these inhibitors also suppress the prostaglandin synthesis in the CNS that is stimulated by pyrogens and thereby reduce fever. So the antipyretic action is because of the CNS manifestation. The analgesic mechanism of these agents is less well understood. So activation of peripheral pain sensors may be diminished as a result of reduced production of prostaglandins in injured tissue. So in addition, the central mechanism is operative. Cyclooxygenase inhibitors also interfere with the homeostatic function of prostaglandins. Most importantly, they reduce prostaglandin-mediated cytoprotection in the GIT and autoregulation of renal function. You can look at this figure, which shows the prostanoid mediators derived from arachidonic acid and the sites of drug action. So stimulus causes disturbance of cell membranes, and this disturbance of cell membranes or cell injury results in disruption in the phospholipid structure, in the phospholipid bilayer in the membrane. So then this causes release of arachidonic acid. So there are two pathways. So lipoxygenase pathway or LOX results in leukotriene formation, and COX pathway results in prostaglandin formation. Then through the COX pathway you have prostaglandins being formed, you have thromboxane being formed, and prostacyclins being formed. So this is where these drugs act. So phospholipase inhibitors and corticosteroids act here. They prevent the generation of arachidonic acid from phospholipids. Okay. Then lipoxygenase inhibitors act here. Cyclooxygenase inhibitors such as NSAIDs, aspirin, which is an irreversible blocker of cyclooxygenase, it acts here. Okay, and then leukotrienes act on various receptors, and actions on these receptors causes transducing signals that cause biological actions. So receptor antagonists work here. And then colchicine, it prevents inflammation caused because of phagocyte attraction and activation. Okay. Moving on to the pharmacokinetics and clinical use. So aspirin has 3 therapeutic dose ranges. The low range, less than 300 mg per deciliter, is per day, is effective in reducing platelet aggregation. Okay, so low range aspirin, it has 3 dose ranges. Low, so less than 300 mg per day, so reduces platelet aggregation. Then intermediate doses, so 300 to 2400 mg per day, so it has antipyretic and analgesic effects. And high doses, so 2400 to 4000 mg per day, so they are used for an anti-inflammatory effect. Okay, so this is what is written here. So aspirin is readily absorbed and is hydrolyzed in the blood and tissues to acetate and salicylic acid, because it is acetyl salicylic acid. So salicylate is a reversible non-selective inhibitor of cyclooxygenase. Salicylate is reversible inhibitor, but aspirin is an irreversible inhibitor. So elimination of salicylate is a first order at low doses with a half-life of 3 to 5 hours. At high doses, half-life increases to 15 hours or more, and elimination becomes zero order. So excretion is via the kidney. At high doses, excretion becomes zero order for salicylate. Other NSAIDs, we have other NSAIDs such as ibuprofen. So they are well absorbed after oral administration. Ibuprofen has a half-life of about 2 hours. It is relatively safe and is the least expensive of the older non-selective NSAIDs. So that is why everywhere in America people take ibuprofen, and they also take it because it is a moderately acting drug. Okay. So naproxen and piroxicam are noteworthy because of their longer half-lives, which permit less frequent dosing. So naproxen has a longer half-life. Okay, it says no to more dosing. Naproxen says no to more dosing. These other NSAIDs are used for the treatment of mild to moderate pain, especially the pain of musculoskeletal inflammation such as that seen in arthritis and gout. They are also used to treat many other conditions including dysmenorrhea, headache, and patent ductus arteriosus, so indomethacin, in premature infants. Ketorolac, it has an analgesic property, right? So it is notable as a drug used mainly as a systemic analgesic, not as an anti-inflammatory drug, although it has typical non-selective NSAID properties. It is the only NSAID available in a parenteral formulation. So ketorolac is the only NSAID available in a parenteral formulation. Ketorolac. Okay, only NSAID parenteral. So non-selective NSAIDs reduce polyp formation in patients with primary familial adenomatous polyposis. Okay, so long-term use of NSAIDs reduces the risk of colon cancer. Next, moving on to the toxicity. So the most common adverse effect from the therapeutic anti-inflammatory doses of aspirin is gastric upset. So chronic use can result in gastric ulceration, upper GI bleeding, and renal effects, including acute failure and interstitial nephritis. So aspirin increases the bleeding time because it is a blood thinner. So when prostaglandin synthesis is inhibited by even small doses of aspirin, persons with aspirin hypersensitivity, especially associated with nasal polyps, can experience asthma from the increased synthesis of leukotrienes. This type of hypersensitivity to aspirin preludes treatment with any NSAID. At higher doses of aspirin, tinnitus, vertigo, hyperventilation, and respiratory alkalosis are observed. So it is a salicylic acid, right? So at higher doses, when you give aspirin, you find respiratory alkalosis because you are metabolically, by giving the drug, increasing acidosis. So the compensation is respiratory alkalosis. At very high doses, the drug causes metabolic acidosis, dehydration, hyperthermia, collapse, coma, and death. So children with viral infections who are treated with aspirin have an increased risk for developing Graves syndrome with hepatic encephalopathy and liver degeneration. a rare but serious syndrome of rapid liver degeneration and encephalopathy. There is no specific antidote for aspirin. Moving on to the non-selective NSAIDs, so like aspirin, these agents are associated with significant GI disturbance, but the incidence is lower than with aspirin. There is a risk of renal damage with any of the NSAIDs, especially in patients with pre-existing renal disease. Because these drugs are cleared by the kidney, renal damage results in higher, more toxic serum concentrations. Use of parenteral ketorolac is generally restricted to 72 hours because of the risk of GI and renal damage with longer administration. Serious hematological reactions have been noted with indomethacin. Okay, and then you have COX-2 selective inhibitors such as celecoxib and rofecoxib and valdecoxib. They have a reduced risk of GI effects including gastric ulcers and serious gastrointestinal bleeding. The COX-2 inhibitors carry the same risk of renal damage as non-selective COX inhibitors, presumably because COX-2 contributes to homeostatic renal effects. Clinical trial data suggests that highly selective COX-2 inhibitors such as rofecoxib and valdecoxib carry an increased risk of myocardial infarction and stroke. The increased risk of arterial thrombosis is believed to be due to the COX-2 inhibitors having a greater inhibitory effect on endothelial prostacyclin or PGI2 formation than on platelet TXA2 formation. The prostacyclin promotes vasodilation and inhibits platelet aggregation, whereas TXA2 or thromboxane A2 has the opposite effects. So prostacyclin promotes vasodilation. So cycle, okay, you want it to move out, okay, vasodilation, and inhibits platelet aggregation. So thromboxane A2 has the opposite effects. Several COX-2 inhibitors have been removed from the market, and the others are now labeled with warnings about increased risk of thrombosis. So people actually found COX-2 inhibitors and made them because of reducing the GI risk, but then they had an increased risk of thrombosis. Next, moving on to acetaminophen. So it is the only over-the-counter non-anti-inflammatory analgesic commonly available in the US. So acetaminophen is the only over-the-counter non-anti-inflammatory analgesic available in the US, because most analgesics are anti-inflammatory and it is a non-anti-inflammatory analgesic. Phenacetin, a toxic prodrug that is metabolized to acetaminophen, is still available in some other countries. So moving on to the mechanism of action of acetaminophen. So the mechanism of analgesic action of acetaminophen is unclear. The drug is only a weak COX-1 and COX-2 inhibitor in peripheral tissues, which accounts for its lack of anti-inflammatory effect. Evidence suggests that acetaminophen may inhibit a third enzyme COX-3 in the CNS. So it is an analgesic and antipyretic agent. It lacks anti-inflammatory or antiplatelet effects. So pharmacokinetics, so it is effective for the same indications as intermediate dose aspirin. So for anti-pyretic and analgesic effects. So acetaminophen is therefore useful as an aspirin substitute, especially in children with viral infections to prevent Reye syndrome and in those with any type of aspirin intolerance. Acetaminophen is well absorbed orally and metabolized in the liver. Its half-life, which is 2 to 3 hours in persons with normal hepatic function, is unaffected by renal disease. So toxicity in therapeutic dosages, acetaminophen has negligible toxicity in most persons. However, when taken in overdose or by patients with severe liver impairment, the drug is a dangerous hepatotoxin. So the mechanism of toxicity involves oxidation to cytotoxic intermediates by phase 1 cytochrome P450 enzymes. This occurs if substrates for phase 2 conjugation reactions such as acetate and glucuronide are lacking. So prompt administration of acetylcysteine, a sulfhydryl donor, may be life-saving after an overdose. So how do you treat acetaminophen poisoning? You give acetylcysteine, which is a sulfhydryl donor. So why is the poisoning occurring? Because there are no phase 2 conjugating substrates. Okay, so you need a sulfhydryl conjugation substrate. For that you are giving cysteine, so acetylcysteine in acetaminophen poisoning. People who regularly consume 3 or more alcoholic drinks per day are at increased risk for acetaminophen-induced hepatotoxicity. So here you can see the skill keeper. So all the NSAIDs and acetaminophen are extremely useful for the treatment of mild to moderate pain. Adequate control of more intense pain requires treatment with an opioid. So one strong, one moderate and one weak opioid drug. We'll know them. We'll briefly describe the most common adverse effects of strong and moderate opioids and administration of which drug in the event of an opioid overdose. Okay. So now let's move on to disease modifying antirheumatic drugs or DMARDs. So the classification, this heterogeneous group of DMARDs has anti-inflammatory actions in several connective tissue diseases. They are called disease-modifying drugs because some evidence shows that slowing or even reversal of joint damage occurs. So this is an effect never seen with NSAIDs. Okay, there is reversal of the effects, reversal of joint damage or slowing of the joint damage. They're also called slow-acting anti-rheumatic drugs because it may take 6 weeks to 6 months for their benefits to become apparent. Corticosteroids can be considered anti-inflammatory drugs with an intermediate rate of action. That is, they're slower than NSAIDs but faster than other DMARDs. However, the corticosteroids are too toxic for routine chronic use and are reserved for temporary control of severe exacerbations and long-term use in patients with severe disease not controlled by other agents. Moving on to the mechanism of action and effects. So the mechanisms of action of most DMARDs in treating rheumatoid arthritis are complex. Cytotoxic drugs, for example methotrexate, probably act by reducing the number of immune cells available to maintain the inflammatory response. Methotrexate. Okay, many of these drugs are also used in the treatment of cancer. Other drugs appear to interfere with the activity of T lymphocytes, such as hydroxychloroquine, cyclosporine, etc. So B lymphocytes, rituximab, or macrophages, gold compounds. So biological agents that inhibit the action of tumor necrosis factor or TNF alpha, including infliximab, adalimumab, and etanercept, have also shown efficacy in rheumatoid arthritis as a recombinant human interleukin 1 receptor antagonist, anakinra. The immunosuppressant effects of these drugs, we'll discuss that in a later chapter. So you can just look at some disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs or DMARDs. So hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine is it has anti-malarial functions. It is the other use. Okay, so the toxicity when used for rheumatoid arthritis is rash, HCQ rash, HCQ GIT disturbance, myopathy, neuropathy, and ocular toxicity, especially when people started using HCQ for COVID prevention, apparently, though it was not proven. They had ocular toxicity. And then gold compounds, they inhibit, they don't inhibit, they interfere with the activity of macrophages. So they have, the actions include, the toxic effects include diarrhea, dermatitis, and hematological abnormalities. Cyclosporin A is used in tissue transplantation as an immune suppressor. So nephrotoxicity and hypertension and liver toxicity are the other effects. Okay. So tocilizumab. So it is an anti-interleukin 6 drugs. Okay, tocilizumab. People used it for COVID again. So it can cause upper respiratory tract infections, headache, hypertension, and elevated liver enzymes. Okay, so I think that is enough. So methotrexate is having anti-cancer uses as well. So it causes nausea, mucosal ulcers, etc. Moving on to the pharmacokinetics and clinical use. Sulfasalazine, hydroxychloroquine, chloroquine, methotrexate, cyclosporine, penicillamine, and leflunomide are given orally. Anti-TNF alpha drugs are given by injection. Gold compounds are available for parenteral use, such as gold sodium thiomalate and orothioglucose. And for oral administration, auranofin, but are rarely used. Aura is gold, right? So increasingly DMARDs, because gold, the formula is AU, silver is AG. Okay, so AU aura. Okay, so increasingly DMARDs, particularly low doses of methotrexate, are initiated fairly early in patients with moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis in an attempt to ameliorate disease progression. Some of these drugs are also used in other rheumatic diseases such as SLE, arthritis associated with Sjogren's syndrome, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, and in other immunological disorders. So all DMARDs can activate tuberculosis and cause severe toxicities. So hepatic toxicity, renal toxicity, or hepatic and renal toxicity basically. So careful monitoring is mandatory. Moving on to the drugs used in gout. So gout is associated with increased serum concentrations of uric acid. So acute attacks involve joint inflammation initiated by precipitation of uric acid crystals. So treatment strategies include reducing inflammation during acute attacks with colchicine, NSAIDs, or glucocorticoids, and accelerating renal excretion of uric acid with uricosuric drugs. So they include probenecid or sulfenpyrazone, and reducing with allopurinol or febuxostat the conversion of purines to uric acid by xanthine oxidase, as you can see here. So this is where colchicine acts. So it inhibits the PMNLs And then you have the MNP, so indomethacin and phenylbutazone, they act on that. MNP is for mononuclear phagocytes, okay? Anyways, so mechanisms, so NSAIDs such as indomethacin are effective in inhibiting the inflammation of acute gouty arthritis. So indomethacin has anti-inflammatory drugs, okay? So these agents act through reduction of prostaglandin formation and the inhibition of urate crystal phagocytosis by macrophages, okay? So you can see indomethacin, so it inhibits uh, urate crystal phagocytosis by macrophages, okay? Next, colchicine is a selective inhibitor of microtubule assembly, so it is a mitotic poison, stops cell injury in mitosis. So it reduces leukocyte migration and phagocytosis, and the drug may also reduce production of leukotriene B4 and decrease free radical formation. So NSAIDs and glucocorticoids reduce the synthesis of inflammatory mediators in the gouty joint because it reacts with tubulin and interferes with microtubule assembly. Colchicine is a general mitotic poison. Tubulin is necessary for normal cell division, motility, and many other processes. So pharmacokinetics and clinical use, an NSAID or a glucocorticoid is preferred for the treatment of acute gouty arthritis. Although colchicine can be used for acute attacks, the doses required cause significant GI disturbance, particularly diarrhea. So lower doses of colchicine are required to prevent attacks of gout in patients with a history of multiple acute attacks. Colchicine is also of value in the management of familial Mediterranean fever, a disease of unknown cause characterized by fever, hepatitis, peritonitis, pleuritis, arthritis, and occasionally amyloidosis. Indomethacin, some glucocorticoids, and colchicine are used orally, and parenteral preparations of glucocorticoids and colchicine are also available. Moving on to the toxicity, so NSAIDs can cause renal damage, and indomethacin can additionally cause bone marrow depression. Short courses of glucocorticoids can cause behavioral changes and impaired glucose control. Because colchicine can severely damage the liver and kidney, dosage must be carefully limited and monitored, and the overdose is often fatal. Finally, moving on to uricosuric agents, normally over 90% of the uric acid filtered by the kidney is reabsorbed in the proximal tubules. Uricosuric agents such as probenecid and sulfenpyrazone, so probenecid, they are weak acids that compete with uric acid for reabsorption by the weak acid transport mechanism in the proximal tubules and thereby increase uric acid excretion. So at low doses, these agents may also compete with uric acid for secretion by the tubule and occasionally can elevate rather than reduce serum uric acid concentration. Elevation of uric acid levels by this mechanism occurs with aspirin over much of its dose range. So what they do is they're weak acids, they compete with uric acid for reabsorption by the weak acid transport mechanism. They are reabsorbed into the blood, whereas uric acid is excreted. Next, at low doses, they also compete with it for secretion by the tubule. Moving on to the effects, they inhibit the secretion of a large number of other weak acids such as penicillin and methotrexate, in addition to inhibiting the reabsorption of uric acid. Pharmacokinetics and clinical use, so uricosuric drugs are used orally to treat chronic gout caused by undersecretion of uric acid, and these drugs are of no value in acute episodes. Toxicity, so the uricosuric drugs can precipitate an attack of acute gout during the early phase of their action. This can be avoided by simultaneously administering colchicine or indomethacin. Because they are sulfonamides, the uricosuric drugs may share allergenicity with other classes of sulfonamide drugs such as diuretics, antimicrobials, or oral hypoglycemic drugs. Then you have xanthine oxidase inhibitors. So the production of uric acid can be reduced by inhibition of xanthine oxidase, an enzyme that converts hypoxanthine to xanthine and xanthine to uric acid. You can see, if you remember the biochemical pathway we studied last year, hypoxanthine to xanthine and xanthine to uric acid, both these reactions are catalyzed by xanthine oxidase, and alloxanthine is the suicide inhibitor of this enzyme. So allopurinol is converted to oxypurinol or alloxanthine. Allopurinol is converted to alloxanthine, it is oxidized, so oxypurinol, by xanthine oxidase. So alloxanthine is an irreversible suicide inhibitor of the enzyme. The newer drug febuxostat is a non-purine inhibitor of xanthine oxidase that is more selective than allopurinol and alloxanthine, which inhibit other enzymes involved in purine and pyrimidine metabolism. So inhibition of xanthine oxidase increases the concentrations of the more soluble hypoxanthine and xanthine and decreases the concentration of the less soluble uric acid. As a result, there is less likelihood of precipitation of uric acid crystals in the joints and tissues. Clinical trials suggest that febuxostat is more effective than allopurinol in lowering serum uric acid. So the xanthine oxidase inhibitors are given orally in the management of chronic gout. Like uricosuric agents, these drugs are usually withheld for 1 to 2 weeks after an acute episode of gouty arthritis and are administered in combination with colchicine or an NSAID to avoid an acute attack. So allopurinol is used as an adjunct to cancer chemotherapy to slow the formation of uric acid from purines released by the death of large numbers of neoplastic cells. So allopurinol causes greater GIT upset, rash, and rarely peripheral neuritis, vasculitis, or bone marrow dysfunction, including aplastic anemia. It inhibits the metabolism of mercaptopurine and azathioprine, drugs that depend on xanthine oxidase for elimination. So febuxostat can cause liver function abnormalities, headache, and GI upset. So uricases such as pegloticase. So pegloticase is a recombinant mammalian uricase. So it converts uric acid to the soluble allantoin, which can be eliminated by the kidney. So this enzyme is absent in humans. And then the effects: an IV dose of pegloticase lowers urate levels within 24 to 72 hours. It is approved for the treatment of refractory chronic gout, and gout flare can occur during treatment with pegloticase, especially during the first 3 to 6 months of treatment, requiring prophylaxis with NSAIDs or colchicine. So that is all about this chapter. So finally, looking at the skill keeper, morphine is the prototype strong opioid. Fentanyl is a strong agent with a rapid onset that is commonly used in the hospital. Alright, especially anesthesiologists use fentanyl. And methadone is a strong agonist used in maintenance programs for patients addicted to opioids. So methadone, codeine, oxycodone, and hydrocodone are moderate agonists, whereas propoxyphene is a weak agonist. So constipation and sedation obviously occur with therapeutic doses. Constipation should be managed with stool softeners. In overdose, opioids cause a triad of pinpoint pupils, coma, and respiratory depression. So if you look at the face, you have eyes, you have the brain here, okay, and then you have the nose, right? So respiratory depression, pinpoint pupils, and also coma. Naloxone, a non-selective opioid receptor antagonist, is an antidote for opioid overdose. So this is all about